Good morning, Milteri.
Good morning, Freddie. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for providing this interview for the Congo Square Connection. You were born in Puerto Rico, where you have roots to the bomba. Can you tell us what the bomba is and how is it connected to New Orleans?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for inviting me on your platform and for everybody who is listening and watching. Bomba is Puerto Rico's African ancestry that dates back to the 17th century, practiced and maintained by the enslaved and free people of color. So normally these were gatherings that were asked by permission of what was going on in the colonial Puerto Rico at that time. A little bit of history or background history. A lot of enslaved were brought to the Hispaniola island that we know now as Dominican Republic and Haiti, and of course to Brazil, one of the places. Just as a little summary, not the whole entire history, but in Puerto Rico, there wasn't a big population of enslaved brought by the Spanish crown. And the Spanish crown wanted the colonies only to have, make the businesses with the Spanish crown. And since there was not a lot of man force and not a lot of enslaved brought by the Spanish crown, then the hacendados or plantation owners around the coastal areas of Puerto Rico were obligated to resort to the contraband and buy and slaves from the French, the Dutch, and the English. And so in Puerto Rico, so that's one aspect. And then we have, of course, the Free Republic of Haiti, the revolution that's happening, and you have hacendados leaving the island, and of course the intermixture of for work throughout the decades. And all of that influenced heavily bomba in different areas of Puerto Rico, not just the north, but I believe it's heavily in the south. There's a lot of French Creole influence in the south, starting from the west, actually from Mayagüez, going all the way to my hometown of Ponce, Arroyo, Salinas. These are old towns in the south of Puerto Rico that were predominantly at that time important for the importation and exportation of sugar, coffee, and other means of economic at that time. And so we have all of that influence, a heavy influence of that connection in the south as well as in the north that we've heard, like Santurce, Calorina, Loíza, are also other, Cataño, are also other towns that are predominantly influenced because of work, because of migration in those towns of Puerto Rico. So then Bomba becomes then a community gathering of release, a form of to plot, right? To plot against, the system. And it is dance, drum, and song. The drums that we use are not congas or djembes. They're called barriles de bomba. They're actually barrels of sugar, wheat. That was the main mode of transportation, of packaging at that time. And since there were laws that were passed where our ancestors could not carry arms, could not have anything that could harm their oppressor because of what was going on in the neighboring Caribbean islands in Puerto Rico, then they had to resort to what was available to them. So the drum became the barril, the barrel drum. And they would use then goat skin, female goat skin, to stretch and put it upon it. And even that has evolved, the rope system, the cuña system, to what we have now. The songs are indicative of the time of what's going on in the community, what's going on to them specifically. And the dance, which I thoroughly enjoy and is my area, I feel, of expertise, is a form of liberation in communication. It is a direct communication, like I said, between dancer and drummer, where the drummer follows the dancer and the dancer becomes the drummer. It's a beautiful interconnection. It's like a duality, it's a competition, but it's a conversation at the same time, where it is not set. It is improvised within the bomba language. And that's the beauty of bomba in the gathering. Back then, it was only elders that would gather. And in certain circles, the elders did not allow the children or the next generation to be a part of it, thinking that they would not understand, that they would change. And that kind of made a disservice to the community, because for a long time, it was just delegated to certain families in Puerto Rico that we know, like the Albizu, the Ayalas, the Cepedas, the Alduin, and other Boma families. These are the most prominent ones because they were able actually to find funding or were sponsored to have their music recorded, and then being online, the next generations to come, that's what we were the first that we will see. And also because of the documentary that happened in the year 2000, where Banco Popular, which is a bank in Puerto Rico, was doing a series of a yearly, and they still do it, a series of yearly documentaries. And that year was called Raíces, and it was all about Bomba. And some of the elders in those films are no longer with us, but it was a more comprehensive way of seeing Bomba from what it was to what it was then, and now how it has changed and evolved, and how inclusive it has become, and the beauty of how the importance that the community said we need to preserve this for the next generations, and how now we see children and babies in what we call the bates, the inner circles, right, of Bomba. And I have to say, Bomba, it is our African ancestry because of the complexities of who we are in the Caribbean. It has elements of our original Taino inhabitants, the original inhabitants of Puerto Rico, the Tainos, the Arawaks, which is the maraca, the kwa. But it also has the dances itself, the form has a certain European elements until the drum calls. And there's no way to escape it. So, it has a mixture of all who we are. And the people who have come through Puerto Rico, it has influenced and left a little bit of their their history and way of dancing and drumming. So it continues to evolve.
That's wonderful. Yes, and I understand that there is a connection between the bomba and a dance that was very popular in New Orleans. Can you talk about that connection, and how did you discover that connection?
Well, I'm going to start with the discovery. My dad is from New Orleans. He's from Harvey, and he came to Puerto Rico by means of his job. He was in the U.S. Coast Guard, and he fell in love with Puerto Rico and had his family there. And whenever I would come and visit New Orleans, I remember one time I asked my dad about the traditional dances of New Orleans. And this was before social media. This is, still we were still on dial-up with the internet. And he told me very straightforward, oh, Congo Square, we must go to Congo Square. And I remember going to Congo Square with him. And it was at that time, it was closed for renovations. It was not open. And it was closed for a long time. But I started asking him, and also, just delving through the internet, what I could find in terms of what were the original dances, African-based dances of New Orleans. And then I came across the history of Congo Square. And I found certain rhythms that we also practice in Bomba. Obviously the bambula, the sika, the kalinda, and even kalinda now. Now I even found a little bit more of what that means in terms of Puerto Rico. And that connection, when I heard, and I remember when I entered, the Congo Square Louis Armstrong Park reopened. It reopened a year later, and my dad had recently passed away. So I feel like it was a calling, and I felt that after, him passing, something was calling me to Congo Square. And I remember going, and I heard the drums, and I knew that it was on a Sunday. I knew Sundays was going to be drumming, right? Because of the history of the Caribbean. So I went on a Sunday, and when I heard those drums, I literally left my family behind and ran to wherever that sound was coming from more forcefully. And I found my new family, cultural family, Baba Luther, Mama Jamila, who the Congo Square Preservation Society. And just, it felt right at the moment. And it felt like I had found another part of not only of myself, but also of my history and culture. in bomba and asa bombera, and how we're not too far or disconnected from New Orleans or in the rest of the Caribbean, that these rhythms, the yuba, sika, calendado, bambula, we also have it in the repertoire of Puerto Rico. Whether now there are certain differences and whether the style of hitting it or the speed, but the essence is still the same. The connection is there. And for me, I was elated in finding out this connection that I didn't know before and that nobody else at the time knew before. And as a dancer and choreographer, I said, this is my history. I need to bring it to my repertoire. I need to bring my company here. They need to see this. They need to, and then seeing the imagery, right? The beautiful mural that was there, just the form of how, their hands and their hips and what it is. You see the drumming, the gathering, the dancing. It's like, oh my God, this is bomba. This is exactly bomba. And to see that and to connect and to sit down now with Baba Luther and Mama Jamila and yourself, Freddi, it's such a beautiful discovery. Yes. And it's such a beautiful discovery.
Thank you so much. Mm-hmm. You mentioned the gatherings on Sundays, mm-hmm. and we connect with Congo Square as our major gathering place. What are similar gathering places, or where did people gather on Sundays in Puerto Rico?
Well, mainly it was in the colonial times. So let's talk about two different periods. The colonial times, it was Sundays for the rest day. And some of the workers would ask their owners to have a gathering in an hacienda, so in a plantation. And some of the haciendas, like for example, in the South, we had the Hacienda Mercedita. We also, there's a plantation, it's a song, but you really, because of the language and how it's changed within the colloquial within our ancestors, there's a song that says a la verdegué, a la verdegué, mi mamá no quiere que yo vaya a la verdegué. La verdegué is actually a plantation in the town of Guayama from I believe it's a Dutch family. And because they couldn't pronounce it really well, Verdegué, the actual name, so they became the colloquial, Verdegué, and then it talks about my mom doesn't want me to go to the plantation where they're having a gathering. So the gatherings normally happen during that time in the open spaces of the haciendas, right? Or the sugar refinery mills. And also, then as the time came about and then we move in time in the different families in the backyards or the front yards of certain families, right? Now today, fast forward 2022, because we have the next generation and the youth very involved in bomba, and because also of tourism, now we find bomba, in a park, in a business in the street. I remember in Santurce, I went to, it was very popular before the pandemic, going to the street, open street. Now it came back and it just had, we call it chinchorros. It's just like a little shack where you buy your drinks and your food, and there's a stage, and it's like in the middle of the street. And on Mondays, it was the it place first within the community, but then people from tourists were hear about this and they would come. And it became like, it was like 500 people. You couldn't even walk or park in the street. And also we have different batallas. Batallas are indigenous words, again, to the open ceremonial space where indigenous will have their ceremonies and their practices. They're actually, it could be in a house, or in a community center, or open on the beach. There's many, or in a park, in a cave. There's many ways of making bomba more than in an establishment, taking it back to where the freedom where we can have where our ancestors couldn't before.
Yes. I see that you're a scholar, that you conduct field research as well as archival research. And one of one example that has resulted from that is the version of the stick fighting dance that you're now taking to the stage. And I know that a version of that dance was also performed in New Orleans. So can you tell us about your process and about this dance in general?
Yes, well, I remember that when I started kind of questioning a little bit, or delving in more, I should say, into the history of the songs and what the songs meant, specifically the older ones, the ones that have survived throughout the generations. And I remember hearing a lot about this name called Coco Ballet. Coco Ballet, Coco Ballet. They were saying the faster rhythms, and the Holandés, and say corrido, and the Yubat. I would hear this, and I remember sitting down with a few times with one of the elders, Jesus Cepeda, and asked him, "What is Coco Ballet?" Because I was told it was a rhythm, and I said, "So if it's a rhythm, how does it sound?" It's away from the 5 main rhythms. It's not one of the custom rhythms, which are 30-something rhythms. I've never heard this rhythm of Coco Ballet. So how does it sound? How do you play it? And he go, "Oh, no, mija, that's not no sound. That's an actual dance." And I'm like, "What?" And then he got out with his cane and he was like, "No, that was el baile del palo, del palo." I'm like, "What?" And he goes, it was a stick dance, and because our ancestors couldn't carry, any arms, they would carry around the sticks. They would go around with sticks, and they would use these sticks to kind of practice their defense mechanisms and the combative mechanisms, kind of in a dance. And when Bomba, we used to do it in a dance, and for a while back, I'm talking about the 60s, like 50s, 60s, the Cepeda family used to have a little performative alluding to that Coco Ballet stick fighting. And also the Aluas in Mayagüez, it was part of the ballets, the community ballets. And it was more of, fighting over women and, just the quarrel between them. And, then they're going to grab a stick to hit each other. But in that, I kind of questioned that. I think that was a little bit too watered down. I said, well, this is combative. This is a form of defense. This is African based. If you go to Africa, this is it. You visit the Caribbean, this is a sport. How can it just be fighting over a lady or love interest? And so I challenged that question. And, I sat down more in depth. I went into the archives of my hometown in Ponce, looking at what was going on in different haciendas at the time, trying to find as much as I could, piecing the connecting, the songs and what the interview with the elders and what was going on actually during that time. And I was within my process, I was lucky enough to find a master cocobalero, who his name is Miguel Quijano, who his father used to play coco ballet just as youth, just like you would just come and play, ball or something in the streets there with the Cepedas, with the Ayalas in Puerto Rico, and that he remembers in the 70s going to Puerto Rico, because he was born in the States, but he could both go to Puerto Rico and play coco ballet. His father would teach him all the ins and outs of it and how it was connected to, like, El Juego de Maní in Cuba, the Mayolé in Haiti, and other forms of the Caribbean. And he became a staple of really, really, what are the combative forms, all the elements that how you play coco ballet, and why, and the significance, because there are different significance to why we have, for example, we start with the X, the sticks are placed on the X in front of the drummers, and depending on where it was, with the rise or the sundown of the sun, all of that plays a significance into it, in the reverence, and how it was not really fighting for a loved one, but mostly it was kind of like, the capoeira disguise, and just, addressing, preparing for. Specifically in the South, specifically in my hometown of Ponce, there were a lot of rebellions, but it's very poorly documented, unfortunately. or not even at all. We do have some books that reference to it, but there were a lot because the enslaved that were brought to the South, particularly, they were not broken down. They didn't go through the system that they had. They were just directly brought in because of the contraband brought directly. So we had warriors amongst us that knew this and knew how to fight with sticks. And that for me was very important because there were three main names that came across in the history, even the women who took arms and took into this offensive of combating. And those three names, those three people are the main emphasis in my stage productions. I revived it really for the stage and also for the community, but mainly because I want people to know that Puerto Rico had this and it was lost. The Bomba community did not know anything about Coco Ballet, stick fighting dance, until just recently. And because also Miguel took in other bombero from Puerto Rico to teach, he created a school and just a selective people that he wanted. So I was the only one female in the group, and Cimarrona, warrior. And from the beginning, I told Miguel, I want this for the stage, but I don't want to do a 5, 6, 7, 8 little. I can choreograph anything, but it cannot be a simple choreography made up story. This is real. I need the real, the rawness. I need it because that's what we're going to take to the stage. And so we premiered it in the Bronx first, and then in Puerto Rico last March. I took my entire company to my hometown, and we did it in La Plaza de La Delicia, which is right there in the town square, in front of the oldest fireplace in the Caribbean. And I can tell you, and we invited the Bomba community. And there's now, since then, we've been having workshops. Miguel has been having workshops to revive this and to bring it back. So that way we don't continue to lose it because it's a part of our history. So we're very excited. I know Miguel is coming to Congo Square. We're going to be doing that in March.
Wow.
Square. So
March 2022.
Yes, we're coming.
No, actually 2023.
Oh, it's a 2023?
March
Yeah,
2023.
Yes, 2022. 22 is right now. We passed it.
Yes,
When we're coming, we're going to bring our production, but Miguel is coming with us. I can teach it, but I feel let's share the source. He is the one who has been passing that information on to me, and I honor him as my mentor and elder. And he's coming to teach Coco Ballet in Congo Square.
Wow, thank you so much.
Yes, and we're very excited about that. So everything that I do has to be backed up by facts. I really, the creative mind is amazing, but I have a responsibility as a culture barrier to tell our truth and really what happened and highlight those that came before us. So for me, it's important to not just, the creative process is my creative process, but the history, the substance, the documentation needs to be there. And that is what Coco Ballet
is That's
about.
Wonderful. Mm-hmm. And you're doing that on different levels. Not only are you a historian, a scholar, choreographer, but you're also a fashion designer. Yes. With a line of skirts. So can you tell me why that was important to you and what it involves, what it includes, your line?
Well, the line is important because it's the first Bomba brand in attire at all, US and Puerto Rico. I've been at it for 16 years, perfectionizing my craft. And I am a bombera that makes her skirts, makes the skirts for the community. As you can see behind me, I'm the creator of the first Bomba flag skirt. And to represent my island and represent, yes, there's Black people in Puerto Rico. Yeah, and we're very proud of it. And we're very proud to represent our island, Mm-hmm. And for me, it's important because textile defines also part of your culture, just like food and music. What you wear defines also who you are and where you're coming from. And there was a brief period in time within the community where people were rejecting the skirt. And I'm like, but then I go again, my inquisitive mind, I go, but wait a minute, let's go back. Let's go back to fashion, where does fashion start? When you look at fashion history, they all go back to Africa. They're all going to go back to the Egyptian empire. They're all going to back to the different dynasties and how they influenced each dynasty is influenced what was going on in the community and what was going on at that time, and how fashion also grew. And we all know that our history does not start in Europe. It goes back to Africa. And so I started there looking at how the Egyptians would tie their skirts and how the skirt is royalty. The length of the skirt, even as we do now, wearing eyeliner, all of that was royal. It was part of the royal families. And the skirt was raped, and the type of cloth, the pleatedness, the type of fabric, it was different for every social class. And of course, the ruffling is a little bit, the ruffling, and then of course, we do have those other elements, right? The puffy sleeves, high collar that later on came with the European and the colonization, all that stuff. But for me, it was important to bring back, because as a dancer, and I've always said, and this is my definition, that the skirt is an extension of my movement, and it creates these carvings in space. This beautiful. It actually, as I move, is actually amplifying my feel, and it creates this beautiful imagery in space. So I'm not going to reject the skirt. I know how to dance without a skirt and with a skirt, but the skirt is who we are in the Bomba community and who have we become, and why reject that. And I looked also to the other forms of the Caribbean and how they use the skirt, and we all use the skirt differently. We all hold it differently. We all hold it to, it's a different form. So for me, that was important for me to keep that essence. And then not just to have a bomba skirt, but now as a bomba dancer that I go into any ballet in Puerto Rico or in the US or abroad, it has a form of social justice. What is my skirt also representing besides the community? What social justice calls? So for me, when I created the bomba Puerto Rican flag that you see right behind me on the painting, it was my social justice cause to say, I'm wearing this because I am from Puerto Rico. It's an identity for me. This is my identity. And I did a line called Resistencia y Libertad that actually became an exhibition of bomba attire from the colonial system, 17th century, all the way now to now. And we're in the process of a documentary, interviewing and honoring all the seamstresses and designers and the new generation that's coming up. Because it's important that it doesn't matter how we feel about it, it's a part of who we are. And the textile definitely speaks volumes, and now more social justice cause. I have skirts that represent the LGBT community, represents what's going on with females in Puerto Rico, that unfortunately the other significant others are abusing them and disappearing them, and there's a movement for that. What's going on with colorism and racism, there's a skirt for that. And then that was predominantly also part of the basis of the exhibition. It has changed. The usage of the petticoat. We don't, the modern dancer doesn't use the petticoat unless it's a stage production. And how the significance of that in the action of the days not too long ago, in the 70s and the 80s. So that history, we cannot lose it. And just as there was no children's book before until I wrote it, the first one, my children's book, there's a lot of firsts. Why? Because I'm looking at this for the community that I serve, and for and the people who follow me, and for my next generation, for my daughter. So, there was nothing like this. The attention to this, it was just only the songs and the families and who families, but the attire is so important, and it connects us because it is French influence, and it connects us to New Orleans, Spanish influence, English. So our histories are so similar. So our attire will be similar too.
Yes.
But then the twist now in 2022, 21st century is we're using the skirts for social justice cause. And what is our cause, whether it be personal or community? And that's the importance of Bomba Caribbean skirts that we serve everyone. I've sent some skirts. Mama Jamila has my skirt too. I sent some skirts out there to New Orleans, and how important it is not only to the Bomba community but to the Afro-Caribbean dance community.
Yes.
And
Thank
that's
you
very
so much for this work. You are just a gift. You're a gift to the culture. Yes.
you.
As a dancer, choreographer, scholar, author, fashion designer, and educator. I
Yes.
must say that you have several degrees in education. So
Yes.
thank
yes.
you for making these connections.
My pleasure.
I would like for you to leave your not only photographs of your company and all, but the websites for the
Yes.
skirts, for the connecting with you, so that people may do that.
Absolutely. On social media, Facebook and Instagram, the company is Bombazo, Bombazo Dance Co. For the skirts, it's Bomba Caribbean Skirts or Bombazo Wear. You'll find it as well. Online is bombazodanceco.com, bombacaribbeanskirts.com. You can find us on social media, TikTok, that's our website. We're more than happy to, continue this mission. It's not about me. It's the passion I have for dance. It's a passion to reconnect. And I think that's what we've been seeing now, even a lot more so than maybe probably 10 years ago, is that the younger generation and older reconnecting to their roots and finding what they have similar. And Bomba right now, Bomba's for all. We do have coming up, and we will have it on our website, but in person, evening dance presentation of our new production, Como Eres, which is highlighting a new trend in Bomba community where we have the LGBT community feeling comfortable. They've always felt comfortable, but I think it's more directly to the male dancing in the skirt. There was a whole controversy about that back in the early 2000s when a young man put on a white skirt to dance Bomba and how the community really came down on him. But then I saw it again jumping into almost from 2019 to 2020 in New York. And I'm like, yo, we're coming into the next a new era. Why are we still with trying to put people in boxes and where they don't feel comfortable in those boxes? So from that came the birth of Como Eres As You Are with Cedric Leyva Jr., who is a Puerto Rican actor and dancer and Bombazo member. And there's a little video of what we did in 2020. And now that will be expanded to a full evening length work here in the Bronx, and we will be taking it to Puerto Rico next year as well, God willing, to expand a little bit more on that journey and what that means to people of the community, of the LGBT community, and how we are more inclusive, I think, is being more inclusive in the whole concept, without still changing anything about the traditional aspects, but just being more inclusive, that Bomba, the rhythms call everybody, and it does not discriminate.
Yes. Thank you. That's wonderful. I have one question though. You have a very long interview, you know that.
I talk a lot,
but you have so much information. Yeah. What connections do you see in other parts of the African diaspora? You see the Bomba. Well, we know the Bomba in Puerto Rico. Here is the conga dance, or dance is very similar in New Orleans. Have you looked at other areas, say in Haiti or in Cuba, Brazil?
Oh, yes, absolutely. For example, in Cuba, when we went to Santiago de Cuba in 2018, they have the tumba francesa, and that's from the descendants of the Haitians that came after the revolution that came through the north to Cuba. And it was so beautiful because we were the most that we were interacting with them, but Bombazo, and the tumba francesa has a lot of similarities. This is aside from the Afro-Cuban deity and religion. This is completely different. It's more Haitian derivative of the tumba francesa. But even in Latin America, look at the Garifuna community, Honduras, Guatemala, right? They have the drum as well, similar to ours. Just a little different with the snare. It has a snare sound. The maraca, the dancing, the moving of the hips, which they call punta. But even then, it's not just punta, it's a lot of other rhythms as well within their community. We look at Santo Domingo, also they have the bambula, and connection also to the Haiti border. And also on north in Samana. Of the French Caribbean island, I was going to tell you, Guadeloupe, Martinique, they have the guoca, which is similar to us, the kumina in Jamaica, right? So we are very connected. The drum is everywhere. Wherever our ancestors landed, they still may have their connections to their motherland. And with different variations now, it's a different culture, right? But still that spirituality and connection has always been there, and the drum has always been a part of it. So as a drum enthusiast, as a passion for dance in Afro-Caribbean dance, I don't only focus in Puerto Rico. I travel through the Caribbean and Latin America because it's important, specifically in the Hispanic community, to acknowledge our Blackness and to acknowledge that we have this it's in our food, it's in the music, we can see it, we can taste it, it's a part of us. And we need to continue to visibilize, and that's really was my mission, to visibilize, just because of my personal experiences. We have to visibilize that our Blackness is beautiful and it's everywhere, and how we're connected. I mean, Venezuela, Colombia, Mapale, there's so many, so many. Chile also, the community there in Chile, they're starting to reconnect not only their indigenous roots, but their African roots. Peru, imagine. So, and the beauty in my company, we're all Puerto Rican and.
Puerto Rican what? I didn't get.
Puerto Rican and, so Puerto Rican Peruvian, Puerto Rican Dominican, Puerto Rican Haitian.
Yes.
So when I took a look at my company members and what brought us together, their hunger and thirst to learn more about bomba and the Puerto Ricans, but then finding that connection. So it's just so beautiful that happening within our inner family. So now we're in the process of the years to come to continue to travel and continue to make those connections in person. So to share and have these wonderful cultural experiences.
Wonderful. You are, like I say, a gift to us, to the community, to the world. Thank you so much for all that you do.
Thank you, Freddi, for having me. Thank you, everyone, for listening.